Yo, well, what's up everyone? It's and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into something that's a little less about the latest tech specs and a little more about the software side of things, but equally important, computer viruses. We're talking about what they are, how they work, and most importantly, how you can protect yourself from them. Now, whether you're a tech pro or just starting out, understanding how viruses operate is crucial in this digital age. We rely on our devices for pretty much everything, so keeping them safe from these digital threats is paramount. So if you've ever wondered about the inner workings of a computer virus and how to keep your data safe, then stick around. We're about to break it all down MKBHD style. Let's get started. All right, let's start with the basics. What exactly is a computer virus? In simple terms, a computer virus is like a tiny piece of malicious code that attaches itself to a legitimate program or file on your computer. Think of it like a parasite that needs a host to survive. Now, this host could be anything from a simple document to a complex software application. Once the virus latches onto a host, it can then spread from one computer to another, much like a biological virus spreads from person to person. But how does it actually do that? Well, a virus works by executing its code, which is a set of instructions that tell the computer what to do. This code can then replicate itself, creating copies of the virus that infect other files or even entire systems. The scary part is this whole process usually happens in the background without you even realizing it. You might download an infected file, open a sketchy email attachment, or even visit a compromised website, and boom, you've potentially invited a virus onto your system. And trust me, you don't want that. These things can range from being a minor annoyance to causing some serious damage to your data and your devices. Okay, so we know that viruses can replicate and spread, but how does that process actually work? Let's break it down into three main stages: replication, activation, and spreading. First up, replication. This is where the virus makes copies of itself and attaches those copies to other programs, files, or even the operating system itself. It's like a sneaky little gremlin making duplicates in the dead of night. Next, we have activation. This is the trigger point for the virus. It's when the infected file or program is executed, meaning you run it. This could be something as simple as opening an infected document or running a specific application. And finally, once the virus is activated, it tries to spread to other files, programs, or systems on your network. Think of it like a chain reaction. It can spread through emails, file transfers, shared networks, basically anywhere it can find a new host. Now, the methods viruses use to spread can get pretty complex, but understanding these basic stages is crucial to grasping how they operate. Alright, so we've covered what viruses are and how they work, but just like there are different types of biological viruses, there are also different types of computer viruses, and each one has its own unique way of infecting and spreading. First up, we have file infector viruses. These are the classic types of viruses that attach themselves to executable files, you know, those files that end in .xi. These viruses can corrupt the files they infect, and they spread when you run the infected file. Next, we have macroviruses. These guys infect document files that contain macros, which are essentially automated scripts. You'll find macros in things like Microsoft Word documents or Excel spreadsheets. These viruses activate when you open the infected document and often spread through email attachments. Then there are boot sector viruses. These are the ones that attack the boot sector of your computer's hard drive. The boot sector is what tells your computer how to start up. So these viruses can be particularly nasty. They activate when your computer boots up, and they can be tough to remove. And it doesn't stop there. We also have polymorphic viruses, which are like digital chameleons. These viruses change their code every time they replicate, making them much harder for antivirus software to detect. And finally, we have metamorphic viruses, which are like the ninjas of the virus world. These are even more complex than polymorphic viruses because they completely rewrite their own code to avoid detection. They're constantly evolving and changing, making them extremely difficult to combat. So, how can you tell if your computer is infected with a virus? Well, there are a few telltale signs you can look out for. Think of these as the digital equivalent of a fever or a cough. First and foremost, if your computer suddenly becomes slow as molasses, that's a major red flag. Viruses can consume a lot of system resources, which can lead to sluggish performance or even frequent crashes. Another common symptom is unusual error messages. If you're seeing error messages you've never seen before, or if your programs are crashing more often than usual, a virus could be the culprit. You might also notice files disappearing or getting corrupted for no apparent reason. Viruses can delete, modify, or corrupt your files. So if you start seeing weird things happening to your data, that's not a good sign. And keep an eye out for any new unfamiliar programs or icons appearing on your desktop or in your system tray. Viruses can install themselves on your system without your knowledge, so if you see something you don't recognize, don't click on it. Frequent system freezes or crashes are also something to watch out for. If your computer is constantly freezing up or crashing, it could be a sign of a serious virus infection. And finally, unauthorized network activity is another red flag. If you notice unusual internet usage, even when you're not actively using the internet, a virus could be sending data from your computer without your knowledge. We've talked about the symptoms, but how do these pesky viruses actually spread in the first place? Well, they're sneaky little things and they have a few tricks up their sleeves. One of the most common ways viruses spread is through email attachments. You get an email that looks completely legit, maybe from a friend or a company you recognize, but it contains an infected attachment. You open the attachment and boom, the virus is released onto your system. Another way viruses spread is through infected websites. You visit a website that's been compromised by hackers, and without you even realizing it, malicious code is downloaded onto your computer. This is why it's so important to be careful about the websites you visit. Peer-to-peer file sharing networks like torrent sites are also a common breeding ground for viruses. When you download files from these networks, you never know for sure who uploaded them or what else might be lurking within those downloads. And don't forget about USB drives and external devices. These can be infected just like any other storage device. You plug an infected USB drive into your computer and the virus can jump ship and infect your system. And then there's social engineering, which is basically tricking people into infecting themselves. This could be anything from a fake software update that looks legitimate to a scary-looking pop-up message that warns you of a virus and urges you to click on a link to remove it, which of course actually downloads the virus. Okay, so we've covered what viruses are, how they work, how they spread, and the symptoms they can cause. But what are the real-world consequences of actually getting infected? Well, let me tell you, they can be pretty serious. First and foremost, viruses can corrupt or even delete your important files. Imagine losing all your precious photos, documents, or work files. It can be devastating, but it's not just about data loss. Some viruses can actually damage your computer's operating system, making it unstable, unusable, or even bricking it completely. It's like having a digital wrecking ball loose on your system. And then there's the threat of identity theft. Some viruses are designed specifically to steal your personal information, like passwords, credit card details, or even your social security number. This information can then be used to access your bank accounts, open credit cards in your name, or even steal your identity altogether. And it doesn't stop there. If your computer is infected with a virus, it can also be used to spread that virus to other devices on your network. So you're not just putting your own data at risk, you're potentially putting everyone else on your network at risk as well. And finally, some viruses can hijack your computer's resources to mine cryptocurrency or launch attacks on other computers. This can slow down your computer to a crawl and even make it unusable. Alright, so we've covered the scary stuff. Now let's talk about how to protect yourself from these digital threats. The good news is that with a little bit of vigilance and the right precautions, you can significantly reduce your risk of getting infected. First and foremost, you need to have reliable antivirus software installed on your computer. Antivirus software acts like a digital bodyguard, scanning your system for known viruses and blocking them before they can do any damage. But antivirus software alone isn't enough. You also need to be smart about your online behavior. Avoid clicking on suspicious links or opening email attachments from unknown senders. Remember, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Keep your software up to date. Software updates often include security patches that fix vulnerabilities that viruses can exploit. Use a firewall. A firewall acts like a barrier between your computer and the internet, blocking unauthorized access and preventing malware from entering your system. Back up your data regularly. This way, even if your computer does get infected, you'll have a copy of your important files stored safely elsewhere. And finally, practice safe browsing habits. Be careful about the websites you visit and the files you download. Stick to trusted sources and avoid websites that look suspicious or that you've never heard of before. Okay, so you've taken all the precautions, but somehow your computer is still acting up and you think you might have a virus. What do? First things first, disconnect from the internet. This will prevent the virus from spreading to other devices on your network and will also stop it from downloading any additional malware. Next, run a full system scan with your antivirus software. Make sure your antivirus is up to date before you do this, as new viruses are being released all the time. If your antivirus software finds and removes the virus, great, but if it doesn't, you might need to try manual removal. This can be tricky, so it's often best to seek help from a tech-savvy friend or a professional. Once you've removed the virus, it's a good idea to change all your passwords, especially for any accounts that involve financial information or sensitive data. And finally, if you haven't already, now is the time to back up your data. Now here's the thing about viruses, they're constantly evolving. Just like biological viruses mutate and become more resistant to treatments, computer viruses are always changing to become more sophisticated and harder to detect. Early viruses were relatively simple and easy to spot, but modern viruses are a whole different beast. They're often designed to target specific vulnerabilities in operating systems or software, and they might not show any obvious symptoms at all, at least not right away. This makes them much harder to detect and remove, and to make matters worse, some modern viruses are specifically designed to evade detection by traditional antivirus software. We're talking about things like ransomware, which encrypts your files and holds them hostage until you pay a ransom to the hackers, or spyware, which secretly monitors your online activity and steals your personal information without you even knowing it. And then there's the whole world of botnets, where hackers infect thousands or even millions of computers with malware, and then use those infected computers to launch large-scale attacks. It's a constant cat-and-mouse game between the good guys, the security researchers and software developers who are working tirelessly to protect us, and the bad guys, the hackers who are constantly coming up with new and innovative ways to exploit our systems. So there you have it, guys, a crash course in computer viruses. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the basics of what viruses are to the sophisticated methods they use to infect our systems. But the most important takeaway is this: staying safe in the digital world requires vigilance, awareness, and the right tools. Keep your antivirus software up to date, be cautious about the links you click and the attachments you open, and back up your data regularly. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about computer viruses and how they work, the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself from them. Thanks for watching. Stay safe online and remember to keep your systems protected. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tech insights.